Okay, so let's have a look at the standard deviation as it applies to a frequency distribution table. So what we have here is a range of scores, my x values. Right? So I have scores of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. I also have the number of times each of those scores were achieved. For all the different variables, the different values, we have a different number. And what you're looking at here, that is actually the formula for working out the standard deviation for the frequency distribution of this data. It looks a bit scary, but it's okay, I'll talk you through it. You don't actually need to remember this, I just thought it was really interesting. First thing that we need to do is work out the actual frequency multiplied by the score. Now I've done that already. Here I have the f, the frequency multiplied by the x, or the score. And you can see up here that all I've done is multiply these two together to get the 2. This one, the 26, it's just the score multiplied by the frequency. All I've done down here is I have summed each of those frequencies together and multiplied by the score. So I'll do the same now. It's this side here where the frequency is. It'll be equal to the sum of all of the frequencies, because we want a frequency sum as well. So we can see that there are actually 50 of these things. Okay. Now, in order to do the next bit, let's ignore this and talk about how do we do it on our calculator. Alright, so here's our little example of our calculator, the emulation that I have. First thing we're going to need to do is actually go into the setup to make sure it's showing us what we want it to show us. Okay, so what we need to do is go shift mode to get into the setup. In the setup we see all the different things, different parts that we can set up. We need to push down to get to the statistical setup, just here, number 3. So we click on 3 and it says, do you want the frequency on or off? Well, we are doing frequency table. So believe it or not, we want the frequency on. So now the frequency's on. When we actually go to the mode, to the stat, and to the one variable, you will see not just that X column, but we will see the frequency column, which is like what we have on our Excel document here. That's actually really, really useful. So let's put in the values for each of our X values here. So 1 is our first, then 2, 3, and you'll notice that it's giving a frequency already of 1 for each of these. Now we're going to change that. So you move where the cursor is back over to the top, and so we have 2 is our frequency of the 1. We got 13 is our frequency of the 2, 14, then 20, and then 1. Okay, once we're done with that, it's in the calculator. We know it'll save that. So we can clear that. And if we go back into our statistics here, again, we're looking at the variable. We can get information. Okay, now we could get the number. Perhaps we didn't know the number. Perhaps we hadn't summed that already. We would know that there are 50. There's 50 individual bits of data. Okay, that's what we have shown right here. Okay, so let's clear that. What about the mean? We hadn't actually worked that out yet. The statistics there, and it's the second value here, the X bar. And the average is 3.1 of all of this data. So how would we work out the data here in Excel? Well, the mean, it would be equal to the f of x, the fx, the frequency times the score. So it'll be equal to that divided by the number of frequencies that there are. Up and look at that, 3.1, just like our calculator said it should be. So let's do the standard deviation. Okay, so we clear that. We go shift to the stat, to the variable, and we we have the complete population, so we want the third one there. That's x sigma n, and we go, oh, there we go. So 0.9433, so we can put that in. We'll just type that in. 0.9433, was there more? 9433 9811 9811. Well, that'll do. That's already showing more than we can show in that. Oh, it rounded it off. Okay, very good. That's excellent. So we can use our calculator to very easily work out the standard deviation of a frequency table. That's a really easy thing to do. Let me talk you through this formula then in Excel so that you can see how it would work if you were doing it without a calculator that can automatically work out that function. Okay, so looking at this great big monstrous formula here, the first thing that you see, and I've simplified it up the top up here, is this bit where we have the xi minus mu squared. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is each value of the our frequency, right? Each value of our frequency times our score, right? What we're going to do is we are actually going to take that number, this one here, we're going to take that number away from our mean, which is down here. Okay, so we are going to type in, it'll be D3, you can see it up here, it'll be D3 minus this mean here, and then it's squared, right? And we did that for each one of these. We took the value of our average of each of these numbers away from the mean. Okay, so we took the score away from the mean and then we squared it. Now the reason we square it is because we might get a negative number like this one here, right? This number over here, B3, is the first cell that it's talking about. So 1 minus 3.1 will give you negative 2.1. So to get a positive number out of that, you've got to square it, because a negative times a negative will give us a positive. So we square that. That's all of these numbers here. That's the first step. Next step, what we do is we actually take this number here and multiply it by the frequency of that number. So the frequency is 2. So we would take the 4.41 and multiply it by 2. That's all we've done there. And this is on our equation. What we've done is this first part for each of the numbers, and now we're multiplying it by the sum of the frequency for that number. That's what we've done here. Okay, we do that for each of these. So this 1.21 is multiplied by 13 to give us this number here. This one is multiplied by 14 to give us this one. Okay, so we multiply all of those and we then sum that. That's what this epsilon at the front here means. This funny symbol means that you sum or add up the frequency multiplied by the difference in the mean and the score squared. Okay, we did that. Then what we need to do is we divide the whole thing, all of this number here, this 44.5, we will divide that by the sum of the frequency, which is this yellow number over here. So that's cell C8, which is what we did just here. We took this number, which is F8, cell F8, divide it by this one over here, cell C8, and we actually worked out all of the bits underneath that root sign, the radical sign. We then took this number, 0.89, and we divide it by, we take that number and we put it under a square root. So you'll see up here that I've used square SQRT of that cell there, and that gives us, look at that, those two numbers are, well, pretty well the same. Right, that's our standard deviation. There is a slower way of doing it, the calculator is probably a little bit quicker, but that way I broke this whole formula down so that you could see what really was going on. And we worked out the standard deviation in 2 ways, using our calculator, 9433. Oh, that one, yeah, it's rounded it off funny. But yeah, so they're the same. So that's our standard deviation for for frequency tables.